Welcome back everyone to Hidden History Stories. In today's episode, we're diving into a plot that nearly tore Rome apart and the brilliant orator who stopped it with nothing but his voice and his courage. Every chapter of history has a lesson, and this one shows how a single determined leader can defend freedom against ambition and chaos. But before we begin, make sure to subscribe, like the video, and share it with anyone who loves exploring the past. And tell me in the comments who's your favorite figure from ancient Rome. Your support keeps these stories alive. Now, let's begin. In the year 63 BC, the Roman Republic faced its greatest internal threat since the days of Sulla's dictatorship. A conspiracy led by the ambitious nobleman Lucius Sergius Catiline, known as Catiline, sought to overthrow the government, assassinate leading officials, and burn the city of Rome itself. What prevented this catastrophe was not an assassin's blade, but the brilliant oratory and detective work of Marcus Tullius Cicero, Rome's greatest speaker and a consul who would earn the title Father of his country. Catiline was born into an ancient patrician family that had once held significant power in Rome. However, by the 1st century BC, his family's fortunes had declined, leaving him desperate to restore their former glory. A veteran of Sulla's bloody proscriptions, Catiline had developed a reputation for violence and corruption during his service as governor of Africa, where he was later prosecuted for extortion. Despite his controversial past, Catiline possessed considerable charisma and political ambition. He had stood for the consulship 3 times by 63 BC, each time meeting defeat at the polls. The Roman electoral system heavily favored candidates with substantial financial resources and established political connections, both of which Catiline increasingly lacked. His repeated failures only deepened his resentment against the established order. By 63 BC, Catiline found himself in a desperate financial situation. He owed enormous sums to creditors and faced the prospect of complete political and social ruin. It was this combination of ambition, desperation, and personal grievance that drove him to contemplate the unthinkable, the violent overthrow of the Roman Republic. Catiline began secretly recruiting followers from among Rome's disaffected elements. His core supporters included indebted nobles, displaced veterans from Sulla's armies, and ambitious young men who felt blocked from advancement by the established political elite. Among his key lieutenants was Gaius Manlius, a former centurion who began organizing armed forces in the countryside of Etruria. The conspiracy's plan was audacious in its scope and ruthless in its methods. The plotters intended to assassinate Cicero and other leading senators, set fire to key buildings throughout Rome, and seize control of the government. Once in power, they planned to cancel all debts, redistribute property from the wealthy to their supporters, and establish Catiline as dictator. What made this conspiracy particularly dangerous was its appeal to Rome's growing population of dispossessed citizens. The rapid expansion of the Roman Empire had created enormous wealth, but this prosperity was concentrated among the elite. Many ordinary Romans struggled with debt and poverty, making them receptive to Catiline's promises of economic relief and social revolution. Marcus Tullius Cicero took office as consul on January 1, 63 BC. Unlike most Roman magistrates, who came from ancient noble families, Cicero was a new man, novus homo, from the Italian town of Arpinum. He had risen to the highest office in Rome through his exceptional talents as an orator and lawyer, rather than through inherited wealth and connections. Shortly after assuming office, Cicero began receiving disturbing reports about Catiline's activities. Informants brought word of secret meetings, suspicious gatherings of armed men, and rumors of plans to assassinate government officials. Initially, many senators dismissed these reports as typical political gossip, but Cicero took them seriously and began conducting his own investigation. Cicero's challenge was substantial. Roman law required clear evidence before action could be taken against a citizen, especially one of noble birth. Mere suspicion or rumor was not sufficient grounds for prosecution. Furthermore, Catiline remained in Rome and continued to attend Senate meetings, maintaining a facade of respectability while secretly coordinating his revolutionary plot. Cicero began to hear rumblings of a conspiracy that planned to assassinate several of the government's prominent officials, Cicero included, and burn the city. Through careful intelligence gathering and cultivation of sources within Catiline's circle, the consul gradually pieced together the scope of the threat facing Rome. The breakthrough came when Cicero learned specific details about the conspiracy's timeline and methods. Catiline had set a date for the uprising and had assigned specific roles to his co-conspirators. Some were to assassinate leading senators, others were to start fires throughout the city, and still others were to coordinate with armed forces gathering outside Rome. Cicero also discovered that the conspiracy extended far beyond Rome itself. Gaius Manlius, who had served as a centurion under Sulla, was enrolling men in Etruria, building a substantial military force that could march on the capital once the urban uprising began. This revelation transformed what appeared to be a local political plot into a full-scale rebellion against the Roman state. On November 8, 63 BC, Cicero decided to force the issue. Rather than wait for more evidence or attempt to arrest Catiline privately, he chose to confront the conspirator publicly in the Senate. This decision reflected both his confidence in his oratorical skills and his understanding of Roman political dynamics. When the Senate convened in the temple of Jupiter Stator, Catiline brazenly attended the session, taking his accustomed seat among the senators. However, his fellow senators, now aware of the accusations against him, refused to sit near him, leaving him conspicuously isolated in an empty section of the chamber. Cicero then delivered what would become known as the First Catiline Oration, one of the most famous speeches in Roman history. "How long, Catiline, will you abuse our patience?" he began, launching into a devastating attack that laid out the details of the conspiracy before the assembled senators and Roman people who crowded the temple to listen. The consul's speech was masterful in its combination of detailed accusations, moral outrage, and political theatre. He revealed knowledge of Catiline's meetings, his recruitment of conspirators, his plans for assassination and arson, and his coordination with armed forces outside the city. Most dramatically, he challenged Catiline to defend himself or leave Rome immediately. Catiline's response to Cicero's accusations was weak and unconvincing. He attempted to portray himself as the victim of political persecution and claimed that his accusers were motivated by envy and partisan hatred. However, his defense crumbled under the weight of Cicero's specific evidence and the hostile reception from his fellow senators. Recognizing that his position in Rome had become untenable, Catiline chose flight over further confrontation. That very night, he slipped out of the city and headed north to join Manlius and the armed forces gathering in Etruria. His departure was both an admission of guilt and a declaration of war against the Roman Republic. Catiline's flight created a new dynamic in the crisis. What had been a secret conspiracy was now an open rebellion. The Roman state could invoke its full legal and military powers to suppress the uprising, but the immediate danger to the city remained. Several of Catiline's key accomplices remained in Rome, and their plans for assassination and arson had not been abandoned. With Catiline gone, Cicero focused on identifying and neutralizing the remaining conspirators in Rome. Through continued intelligence gathering and careful surveillance, he uncovered an extensive network of plotters that included senators, knights, and ordinary citizens united by debt, ambition, or ideology. The most dangerous remaining conspirators included Publius Cornelius Lentulus, a former consul who served as praetor in 63 BC, and Gaius Cornelius Cethegus, a young senator known for his violent temperament. These men had assumed leadership of the urban conspiracy and were actively preparing to carry out the planned assassinations and arson attacks. Cicero's investigation revealed that the conspirators had been recruiting foreign allies, including ambassadors from the Gallic tribe of the Allobroges. This discovery provided the consul with an opportunity to obtain concrete evidence of the plot, as foreign involvement constituted clear treason under Roman law. The Allobroge, a Celtic tribe from what is now southeastern France, had come to Rome to protest Roman taxation and administrative abuses in their territory. The conspirators saw these disgruntled foreigners as potential allies and attempted to recruit them for their cause. However, the Gallic ambassadors proved to be a fatal weakness in the conspiracy security. Whether from loyalty to Rome, fear of the consequences, or calculation of their own interests, they reported the conspirators' overtures to Cicero. The consul immediately saw the opportunity this presented and devised a plan to obtain irrefutable proof of the plot. Cicero instructed the Allobroges to pretend cooperation with the conspirators while secretly working as double agents. He arranged for them to request written instructions and promises from the conspiracy's leaders, documents that would provide legal evidence of treason. The consul also positioned trusted agents to observe meetings between the Gauls and the conspirators. On the night of December 23, 63 BC, Cicero's carefully laid trap was sprung. The Allobroges, carrying incriminating letters from the conspirators, were arrested by the consul's agents as they attempted to leave Rome. The letters, sealed with the conspirators' personal seals, contained explicit instructions for the uprising and promises of rewards for foreign support. This evidence was exactly what Cicero needed to take decisive action. Under Roman law, the possession of sealed letters from citizens to foreign enemies constituted clear proof of treason. The consul now had grounds to arrest the leading conspirators and present their case to the Senate and Roman people. The next morning, Cicero convened an emergency session of the Senate in the Temple of Concordia. Before the assembled senators, he presented the captured letters and called the conspirators to account. Confronted with irrefutable evidence of their treason, Lentulus, Cethegus, and their accomplices could offer no credible defense. The Senate's reaction to Cicero's evidence was swift and decisive. The senators declared the arrested conspirators enemies of the state and authorized their immediate execution. This decision was controversial, as Roman law typically required formal trials for capital cases, but the emergency circumstances and clear evidence of treason provided justification for extraordinary measures. Cicero was hailed as the father of his country for saving Rome from another rebellion. The consul's decisive action had prevented what could have been a catastrophic civil war and preserved the Republican government from violent overthrow. However, the crisis was not yet over. Catiline remained at large with his armed forces in Etruria, and the possibility of other conspirators throughout the empire posed ongoing threats to Roman security. The Senate authorized military operations to crush the remaining rebellion and dispatched forces under experienced commanders to hunt down the fugitive conspirator. While Cicero dealt with the urban conspiracy, Roman military forces moved against Catiline's rebellion in the countryside. The proconsul Gaius Antonius Hybrida, ironically Cicero's colleague in the consulship, was officially in command of operations against the rebels, but the actual fighting was led by his legate, Marcus Tullius. Catiline proved to be a more capable military commander than politician. He successfully evaded Roman forces for several weeks and managed to recruit additional supporters among the rural poor and displaced veterans. His army grew to several thousand men, making him a genuine threat to Roman security. However, Catiline's strategic situation was hopeless from the beginning. He lacked the resources for a prolonged campaign, had no secure base of operations, and faced the full military might of the Roman state. His only hope lay in sparking a general uprising throughout Italy, but Cicero's exposure of the conspiracy had discredited the rebel cause. In 62 BC, a force under Marcus Tullius destroyed the armed mob of Catiline and Manlius, killing Catiline in the process, and the conspiracy was over. The final battle took place near Pistoia in northern Italy, where Catiline's forces were cornered and destroyed by professional Roman legions. Catiline himself died fighting in the front ranks of his army, displaying the personal courage that had made him a notable soldier in his youth. His death ended the last serious threat from the conspiracy and allowed Rome to return to normal political life. The rebellion that had threatened to destroy the Republic was definitively crushed. The Catiline conspiracy represented a crucial turning point in the late Roman Republic. It demonstrated both the fragility of republican institutions in the face of determined opposition and their resilience when defended by capable leadership. Cicero's handling of the crisis showed how individual skill and courage could preserve constitutional government against revolutionary threats. The conspiracy also revealed the deep social and economic tensions within Roman society. Catiline's ability to recruit supporters from diverse backgrounds highlighted the growing inequality and political dysfunction that would ultimately contribute to the Republic's fall. While Cicero successfully defended the existing order, he could not address the underlying problems that had made Catiline's message attractive to many Romans. The story of Cicero and the Catiline conspiracy demonstrates how individual leadership and institutional strength could combine to preserve republican government against existential threats. Unlike later crises that would destroy the Roman Republic, this conspiracy was defeated through legal means and constitutional processes, showing that the system could work when properly defended. That was the end of the story of Marcus Tullius Cicero, the brilliant orator who exposed Catiline's deadly conspiracy and saved the Roman Republic from destruction. If you found this story fascinating, remember to like, share, and subscribe to the channel so you never miss more hidden history stories.